You tell us.
Oh, well, Marian has just entered, and Marian, where are you, hon?
Hi.
Hi, there she is.
Yeah.
Good. Here we go. We've got Marian Mills on. She's with the APRL, and Scott Tiffney's not with us just yet.
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are. Yay. Okay.
I'm
well,
under,
thanks everybody.
I'm under Tom's name. I don't know how that happened.
I understand. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on another fabulous edition of Stamp Chat live Zoom. It's wonderful to see you all, and we deeply appreciate. Before we get started, I did want to say thank you so much to all those who are APS members. This comes to you from your generous support and your membership, so we really appreciate that. Do consider the Mighty Buck program. That's $1 a month. A $12 donation per year really goes a long way, so we appreciate that. And you can share these links with your friends, or these talks with your friends. Remember, we are recording them and putting on our APS YouTube channel. Without further ado, I will introduce Ms. Marian Mills and Mr. Scott Tiffney, who are both our librarians for the APRL. And let's go with Ask the Librarian. So would we like, I guess we can go ahead and put your chat. Do we have any questions right away?
Sure. You have a monograph budget, or do you rely on donations for your books?
About 90% of what we have, we receive through donations. We do have small budgets for various items. We do have a general budget for materials that we buy. I tend to use it for specialized catalogs and other things like that. And we do have sort of designated funds for particular things. Certain societies will say, the Scandinavian Society of Scandinavian material, I can purchase with their funds. So societies do give us sort of designated funds to purchase materials. But the majority of what you see in the library and what is in the library is received through donations.
Do you actively seek out any like rare catalogs or acquisitions?
We do to a certain extent. We sort of rely, I sort of try to do my best with sort of searching materials that are out there and what's available. I also rely on people. I tell people all the time to sort of let us know if there's something you'd like to see in the library. We don't actively search. We do have members who are pretty proactive that will drop me an email or give me a call and say, hey, saw this available in this auction, or saw this online, or saw this just published. Would you be interested? And sometimes they'll either purchase it for us, or if it's not for them to purchase, then I'll look into sort of seeing if it's something we need and purchase it.
Okay. So do you fully catalog them with Marc records and they're searchable in an online catalog, or is it just short records?
We do fully catalog them. We don't really use Marc. We have an online catalog though that is open to the public that I mean, anyone can search for things on there, and you can request books from there, or articles. Even if you're not a member, you can request articles. So we have, yeah, so we have a searchable catalog that we do fully catalog.
How many librarians are there?
We have 3 librarians, and then we have 2 staff that work our circulation desk. They split those duties. We have a reference librarian, Marcia Garman. We have Marian Mills, who you've met, who does our technical services, cataloging, and then myself, the director. And then we have 2 staff that sort of staff our front desk, circulation desk, who split the duties during the week.
Great. I mean, I think it sounds like an absolutely fantastic job to not only work in a library, but work with philatelic items. I'm an acquisitions librarian for a university, and I absolutely love my job. So that's why I asked all the questions about acquisitions.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. No, it's a great place to work, great people to work with.
Debbie is always
a really good environment.
Debbie is always going on these boondoggle trips for the ALA or the TLA. Do you guys get to any of the trade stuff?
I used to go to both SLA and ALA all the time. I don't as much anymore. I try to get to one a year, but lately I've not. I don't know about Marian.
I've never been to ALA. I guess 2 years ago last year I went to the Mid-Atlantic Region Archivist Conference meeting in the spring, and that was great. But I've never been to ALA or SLA.
Well, when Debbie's textbook on library acquisitions is published, I will send you guys a complimentary copy signed by one of the authors.
That would be wonderful.
Okay. Well, I'll quit hogging. I gotta get back to work.
That's great. Thank you.
You might want to tell everybody what kind of tools the library uses to work remotely. Debbie would be interested. She's been trying to help the entire staff get online.
Question, Rob.
Well, right now we can VPN to our desktops. So anything that's on our desktops we can access. We also have access to the back end of certain things like the catalog in our digital collections. Both Marian and I have access to the back end of that. So a lot of it's done through VPN. So we can access our desktops at work and go from there.
She's trying to be busy and productive, so
I brought home books of cataloging to do, so I have plenty to work on, but they're, just boxes of books.
I have a question from Facebook. What is the best auction catalog seen by the librarians if they collect stamps?
Do you want to go?
I don't think I have an opinion about this.
The one I like is I believe it's the Robert Siegel one on the inverted Jenny, the most recent one. It's about 2 years ago. Very good catalog. What's amazing about a lot of auction catalogs, particularly the newer ones, is in the front of them they have these amazing descriptions of if it's a particular stamp, like in this case. They have these amazing descriptions and histories and background of the stamp and its history. And that one certainly does. It's a really fabulous catalog.
Does this make any sense to you? This was the follow-up of the question. Whitman, question mark, Isakawa, and then Honolulu advertiser. Is that mumbo jumbo? Does that mean anything?
Yeah, that's a very famous sort of catalog, auction catalog. Great, again, another great catalog that gives a lot of background in terms of the Honolulu issues, the Hawaiian issues.
And that's the Robert Siegel?
Correct. No, that's another one.
Okay.
Can I say one of my favorite catalogs?
Sure.
CJ, go for it.
I like I apologize if I'm wrong, if it's the Daniel or the David Golden Sale. The Golden Sale of Carriers and Locals. If you are a Carriers and Locals collector, there is so much great information in that sale.
What people don't often realize, like when, say we do tours of the library and you show people the auction catalog collection that we have, and people say, well, how often do you use this? And sometimes it's used for provenance, where you want to trace the history of, or the history of a particular stamp or item that came up for sale. But a lot of particularly the modern ones, have great information in them, like really detailed information about the background of a particular stamp or a philatelic item. They're much more than just sort of pictures of lots and then prices realized. They have a lot more information than people realize.
Thank you. Thanks to you, CJ, as well. Thank you.
It looks like we have a question in the chat.
Thank you.
Is anyone in the library now mailing out reference materials? Scott, did you want to?
I'm right at the moment, no. Basically what we're doing is we're answering them. We're telling people the situation that we're in. We don't have physical access to the collection right now. There's a certain amount I can do online, or that we can do online or through APRL digital or digital collections. If they just want a scan of an article that I can find, we can do that. But in terms of actually processing, say borrowing or something like that, All we're doing right now is we're documenting them. And once we get back, we will process them in the order they were received.
Here we have, do you have official government British postal guides from late 1800s? Great Britain Philatelic Society's website has a bunch of free PDF downloads with Victorian post office information and postal rates. I think they are global Google books. Maybe the PDFs could be loaded onto the APRL digital site.
No, absolutely. We're always looking for resources that are out there. We don't want to duplicate information, but if this is something our viewers want and it's already out there, we can certainly download it. We'll certainly provide it. No, we don't have those in digital form on our site that I know of. And I don't even think we have the paper copies, or very many of them anyway.
One thing that Betsy was doing, my predecessor, and I'll be continuing to do, is if we have a record in our catalog for an item and there is a digital copy available, we do link to it. So if you're doing a search on our library catalog for something, and if we know of a digital copy, then we'll link it right in the record, and you can just go straight to it. So that would be something that I would perhaps do if we do have a record for that. So I can certainly look into that.
It seems as if we've been appreciating some armchair travel while we've all been in isolation. So would you all mind taking us through a walk through the APRL, how big it is, how many, what it looks like, what our building, you know, the origin of our building, how many books we have. Take us through a walk.
Sure. So where we are now, we're in the American Philatelic Center. For those of you who haven't been there, it's in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, which is sort of, if you look on a map of Pennsylvania, it's sort of in the middle of the state, almost dead center in the middle of the state. And the building we're in used to be a wooden match factory. So it's a brick building, beautiful on the facade. It's actually a National Historic building. So it is sort of, you know, it's sort of, the facade was kept. Where we were, when I first started about 9 years ago, we were in a smaller part of the building where we had about 9,000 square feet for the collection. And we had about half of the collection offsite in another part of the building. So we kept things like the auction catalogs and other items offsite, where if somebody wanted them, we could certainly get them, or even if they came in person, we could certainly get them if we needed to. Then in 2016, we moved into a newer part of the building, which, when this was a match factory, was one of the main production floors. So just being on one floor where we used to be, we're now on 2 floors, and we went from 9,000 square feet to 19,000 square feet. We have 2 floors of public space. We also have, off the public space, 2 areas where Marian works up on the 2nd floor. We have an archive area off the 2nd floor, and off the 2nd floor, or off the main public space on the 1st floor, we have our collection of auction catalogs, and we have a donation area where we process donations. In terms of material, we're fastly approaching about 90,000 items in the collection, which makes us sort of second or third, if you will, in terms of the largest philatelic libraries in the world. There's some larger ones in terms of individual items. The Royal in London is larger. If you were to lay our material out in a straight line, this is library speak, it makes about 4 linear miles of material. We try to keep 2 copies of everything. So 2 copies of every book, 2 copies of every journal issue, 2 copies of every auction catalog. And as I mentioned earlier, about 90% of what we have is donated to us. Our members and other people who have these collections that they donate to us are very generous, and we're very fortunate. On the main floor, on the 1st floor, is the public space where we have the main book collection. We have government documents on the 1st floor as well, mostly Postmaster General reports, things like that. We also have the domestic stamp show programs, and we have even a small collection of stamp albums, many of which don't have stamps in them anymore. They're just a historical record of stamp albums. And so every once in a while, people will come into the library and sort of look at those. On the second floor, I'll let Marian talk about the second floor. We have the journal collection.
Marian's the main.
Yeah. So on the second floor, we have the journal collection, like Scott said, and we also have the Airmail Collection. And we, as Scott said, we have the closed stacks area, which we have archives and rare books and maps and photographs and all sorts of little odd things. Some sort of like museum pieces, just you know, all sorts of things that we've collected that are philatelic.
We also up on the second floor have our rare books room. And we also have sort of a small map collection. There's also a really interesting part of the collection. I was just going through this the other day before we had to vacate the building, was stamp posters. If you remember those USPS stamp posters that you see in post offices, there was a gentleman who donated a good portion of these. We have two separate collections. Marian, sort of one of the projects we want to put together for volunteers one time is sort of combining these two collections to sort of sort them. But these two large collections of those stamp posters, which is fascinating too. But that's the main sort of walk through the library. And then we have the desks. There's two desks. We have also scanners throughout the library. We have two on the main floor for public use. We also have one up on the second floor for public use. We have a scanner back in our volunteer work area for private use for the library staff. And anytime you come to the library, you can use the scanners. There's no cost for using them. You can save things to a USB or send them to you send them to yourselves in an email as well. And it's really a public space. So if you physically come to the library, you can sort of browse the collection as you wish. If you want help from the staff, we can certainly help you research things too.
It's a very bright and airy, beautiful built space as well. From an aesthetic perspective, it's very calm. It's very conducive to study, and we do invite each of you to please, when this pandemic is over, to come join us in Bellefonte. We look forward to hosting you. Jerry, I appreciate your patience. Go ahead and with your question, please.
Question I have is, I know you accept donations, and you talked about auction catalogs, and I don't know if they're any value to you, but I'd be happy to donate them. Some of the Christie's auctions from the 1990s. Christie's Robinson Lowe auctions, I got about 10 or 12 of them. Is that the type of thing you're looking for donations of?
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of, I wouldn't discourage sort of 10 or 12. What we're really looking for, and Marian can sort of go into maybe a little more detail with this, with the auction catalogs, we're really trying to sort of improve our international auction catalogs. So you have some holes in our domestic auction catalogs, but the international ones are really ones that we're trying to improve. I got an email, or actually a call yesterday from a gentleman who has a fair number from a Portuguese auction site auction company, a house that I didn't know about. He sent us a box full. I told him to wait till afterwards. But yes, we do. That's exactly the type of things we receive in donations.
And people bundle them up and do you send them a donation or a tax receipt? Or?
Yeah, what we actually send is just a letter of acknowledgement. We can't give a value to it, but it's certainly something you can use for tax purposes, yes.
Excellent. At this time, every little penny will help, I'm sure,
Yes.
friends. I heard through the grapevine, Ms. Marian, if you'd be so kind to indulge us, as to talk about our rare book collection.
Well, I really just started in this position, and I didn't use the rare book collection all that much before when I was doing reference, so I don't actually know all that much about it. I would love to talk about the archives though. So yeah, so I mean, we have a great sort of strange collection of things in the archives that people have sent us. And one of my favorite things are, some of my favorite things are the history of the APS that we have. Yeah, we have some great photographs and documents from the early history of the APS and back when it was the APA, and it's just a really cool set of things. And then we also have the American Banknote Company papers, which are mainly from South America, and it's about sort of the production of stamps and different postal items, postal stationery, all sorts of things like that. And it's a really great resource that we have for studying mainly Central and South American stamps. So that's another thing that I really, I think is great that we have in our collection that not a whole lot of people know about. And we also have the Heinz Airmail Collection, which is a great collection about Bellefonte primarily and the Bellefonte airmail. And if you've read the book by Kitty Wonderly, Bellefonte and the Early Airmail, it's a great book, but it uses our collection of the Heinz Airmail items, and it's just really kind of fascinating to go through the pictures and see all the pictures of the people who flew the mail or who worked at the Bellefonte airmail stop.
When I first started, I remember Betty showing me the table skirt from the 1800s at the World Fair.
Oh, we have a banner from the Columbian Exposition, the Chicago World's Fair, and from it's the American Philatelic Association. It was their display of postage stamps. So we have that banner, and yeah, it's pretty neat. We had it hanging up for a little while and then took it down for preservation.
Yeah, so our legacy is alive and well. It feels really good to be able to have those archives.
Yeah.
It sounds like, when you talk about that banner and some of the other things in the archives there, sounds like it's more of a museum than just a library.
Hopefully, we're looking for the possibility of displaying more of these items. We don't get to display them too much, but we would love to have sort of an opportunity in other parts of the building maybe to display some of these items. There are a lot of things worth having out and for people seeing. Yeah, absolutely.
We have in your opinion, what are the hidden gems of the library?
I think Marian hit on a few of them. Some of the really interesting gems are in the rare book collection. We have a lot of first editions. Say like the Plates of Japan is a really interesting item. It's a first edition. We have a lot of early, some of the things that are just found in the public stacks on the second floor. There are journals on the second floor just that you can go up and use that are pretty rare. Some of these philatelic journals, some of them didn't even last a year. Some of them, they had a couple of issues and they were here and gone. And you can actually sort of see some of these things from 1800 something. I find those the most interesting because it tells you about how the hobby grew over time. Some of its earliest beginnings, some of the people talking about some of the earliest clubs being formed in the United States and elsewhere. So I find some of the things that are sort of hiding in plain sight, if you will, that are really kind of interesting. So.
Rob Hathaway. Oh, well, make note that from our director, Scott English, we also have acquired all the Bellefonte airmail material that Kitty used in her book on display at the APC. Mm-hmm. Rob Hathaway has a very specific question. Rob, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be putting together a 30-minute presentation for my stamp club on revenue stamps. And I like to collect old process old job lots. If I buy an old stamp album, like before World War I, you see a lot of revenue stamps in it, even illustrations. And research online, I come up with from the wiki page on what is a revenue stamp. It tells me that over time, a album publishers and catalog publishers excised all the revenues. Probably a space-saving thing. I'll just read one sentence out of the wiki page. The lowest point in revenue philately was during the middle years of the 20th century. A Stanley Gibbons children's stamp album from the 1950s warned in its introduction, since philately is the collecting of stamps that are employed in the posts. Well, that's not a good sentence for me. We do not put in our albums fiscal telegraph stamps, tobacco tax labels, etc., etc. Get one scan or an image or a couple of images of an old stamp album that had treatment of revenues, and maybe one image of a catalog from the 50s, Stanley Gibbons or any other publisher, where it just showed introductory advice to collectors. I would love it for my presentation. Is that a project an APRL librarian could do for me?
Oh, absolutely, sure. If we have those albums, we can certainly.
I don't even know what the name of the album is.
But we can certainly sort of try and hunt that down for you, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was easy.
Yeah, just Rob, if you want to send us a library request, library@stamps.org, and we'll see what we can do.
That'll be my second one this month. My first one you responded to.
Yes.
I have a question about research requests.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you charge a fee for research time?
We do. This is something that we've gone back and forth on. If it takes, the sort of rule of thumb is if it takes longer than 15 minutes, we're supposed to charge, or we'd like to charge, I think is it $20 an hour, Marian?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, after that. We don't tend to too often unless it really takes the librarian an inordinate amount of time. We're pretty sort of open-minded with that, unless you're asking them to sort of look through, you know, months and months of material. Otherwise, we don't tend to charge it too often, but it is something that we like to have at least available for the librarian to say to a patron, simply because, you know, we do get a lot of requests, so we do like to budget our time as best we can. And so, but there is the odd time that we have to sort of charge that. But we will always say up front, looks like research is going to take longer than anticipated, and here are the charges, and are you okay with that? So we try to sort of keep the patron informed about what we're doing. We don't try to sort of just hit them with an invoice at the end and say, hey, you have to pay us now. We like to sort of let them know up front.
I do it for you, CJ?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you discuss briefly, this comes from Greg Galletti, can you discuss briefly how a club or individual could donate digitized material to the library?
Do you want to handle that one, Marian?
Okay. Well, depending on what it is, we would need some permissions in order to post it online. So we can, if we had it on like CD, we would keep it in the library and then loan it out like a regular book. If it was something that you were to give us permission to post online on our digital library, then we could do that. So it sort of depends on what you see us doing with it, how we would handle it. Sometimes also if we're given like a jump drive or a flash drive, and we don't have permission to put it on our digital library, then we would maybe make a CD and treat it as if it were a physical item rather than a digital item.
It really does depend on the permissions given. So if we ask clubs all the time, and I'm sort of recruiting clubs and organizations to think about sort of donating digitally their club newsletter or their society journal to the digital collections online platform that we have. But we certainly understand that a lot of clubs and organizations use that as a promotional piece and as a member benefit. So we do like to sort of know up front what you're allowing us to do with this. Sometimes we just keep it in-house for use by the librarians in answering questions, for example. Sometimes if we're given the permission, we can put it up publicly to library members on APRL Digital, for example. It depends on how it gets donated to us and what people would like us to do with it. So.
Any other questions? Don, I see, not to put you on the spot, Mr. Heller, but Mr. Heller does join us, and it's nice to see him on Zoom. He comes to us regularly, and it's nice enough to share stories where we see philately. He told me that philately was on a CSI, which was great, because we can always use a little bit of pop culture in our hobby. So that was very cool. So welcome, Mr. Heller. It's good to see you on the call. If you're, I unmuted you in case you wanted to speak. Did I see a mouth moving?
Oh, no. Hello. For those who don't know, I live in State College, which is the next town over from Bellefonte. It was part of my retirement planning to take a job at Penn State and then be retired next to a great library. So.
Well, we're very happy to see you on Zoom, and you're a lovely fixture of our APRL. So thank you so much for taking advantage of this service. We have a question from Mr. Rick Howell. There are a lot of philatelic reference books showing up on eBay that have been digitized. How do we make sure these items are in the public domain? Scott and Marian?
So how do we determine if they're available to be public? A lot of times that comes down to publishers granting that permission. So we can't just sort of go onto a site and download something and then make it available to our members. We have to have the proper permissions in place if that's what he's asking. So we always have to be careful. We get things, I'll get somebody contacting me about, hey, I found this on this site. Can you just sort of make a copy of it and put it in on the library page? And a lot of times you have to track down, okay, what kind of permissions are involved with that? We can't just, I know we live in a very digital age where things are easily accessible and it's great, but we still have to be mindful of copyright and permissions that pertain to those documents and those materials.
And CJ is backing that up with, I believe, currently copyright expires around 1924, 1925.
Right. That's on what he's looking at, yeah.
Right, okay. How many members do we have here in our audience that have actually used the library? I see CJ and Don Heller, good, nice.
Online only.
Online only.
Sorry.
No,
Well,
that's, no, that's great, Rob. I would expect you to use the library. Oh, Greg saying yes. Duncan Barber, you have? Excellent, thank you. Good.
While sitting here, I put in my first request, so we'll see how that works.
Oh, great.
I use the digital library.
Okay. We will be putting up on the website. I'm just finishing off the draft of this news item. If you've ever checked out, when you go to the APS website, and there's the news that you can click on that sort of appears on the first page there. I'm writing sort of a how-to of things you can sort of do remotely and you don't have to physically come to the library. And one of the things that we're going to be doing, I mentioned this in my APRL Digital talk, is that we're going to make APRL Digital open for the time being. So that you'll be given a site to go to, a password and a user ID to use it freely during this time. So I'll put that up tomorrow, probably be done later tonight, be up first thing tomorrow morning. Because we want people to, and the other bonus of this is that we're going to take you to the new responsive site. So the site will look a little differently than it does now. But this is a site, the responsive site, that's a little more conducive to using on a smartphone or a tablet. And so it's a work in progress, but we thought we were going to roll this out later this year, but we thought we'd sort of give people, while they're stuck at home, the opportunity to sort of see it now and use it now. So. I'll be putting that up probably later tonight, first thing tomorrow.
And I'm adding new exhibits to the digital library too, so there'll be more things to look at.
Question for you, and just as an aside, friends, if you missed the talk on the digital library last week, which was very interesting, you can find that in one of our stamp chats on the APS YouTube channel. It's on the playlist Stamp Chat. We have a question from Richard Judge. What would you consider your most pressing need for the library right now and in the coming 3 years? Good question.
For me, it's the digital collection. So we'd really like to make that a really, I think it's an important window to reach out to our members, not just our library members, but our APS members, that they can, more and more, we're getting more and more sort of, people can't necessarily travel to our building to sort of view what we have, sort of see what we have, and to have more materials up on that site. Right now, it's mostly a journal database. We have about 10 philatelic journals on the site. We'd like to expand that to include books, to include exhibits, as Marian was talking about. That's really sort of in the next 3 years. We're also going to roll out fairly soon, probably later this year, a new platform for our online catalog. So look for that. That's about to come out sometime, probably come summer, we'll have that sort of going. But really the digital collections, I think you find more and more people want sort of people to be able to access things on their phones or their tablets or just from home. And so the more that we can have up there that makes what you do in your research and in your collecting more available to you is where I'd like to see the library go. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Marian, if anything you want to sort of talk about.
No, probably not.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi. I was using the digital library yesterday, and I found that there are a lot of exhibits that are not permitted to open up and use, and I was wondering why that is.
It's because if I delete something, it doesn't completely delete. So if I've uploaded something and it's not quite right and I want to upload it again, then and I delete the original one, it doesn't quite delete until I tell Content DM to delete it for me, which I haven't done. So so that's probably, there's the first ones that come up, the exhibits are probably ones that I deleted because they were duplicates, but not quite right. But they didn't quite go away. So I think that's probably what it is.
Okay, thank you very much.
From Duncan Barber, would you like to scan and older than 50 years, British copyright expired, British Post Office Guide 1959? Could you get permissions to scan 3 newer ones?
Sure, we can always look into that. We're always looking for things that are available to be scanned. We just have to be really careful about permissions, that's all. So we're never against anything sort of being made available or scanned. It's just a matter of getting the proper permissions when we do so. As if we're going to make it available. I mean, we have, for example, we have, Marian knows this, we have a lot of items that we have in digital form that we keep on a server that's only accessible to the library staff. And, you know, I put it out in the PLR in one quarter issue about, hey, we have all these things available. And I was putting it out as sort of a sort of call to some of these organizations about whether we could sort of make these available to our members, but we still have to wait. So right now those things are behind a wall where only we can access them. But we would love to make those all accessible. They're there, they can be searched. They're a great resource to have, but we always have to be careful about permissions. Even though, as I say, we live in a very digital age where things are easy to access, we have to be careful.
It's also a big project to do a scanning project. It takes a lot of time and money, and it takes staff time primarily. So it just is something that we need to, I don't know, get a little funding for usually in order to have it as a project.
And that might be a nice segue into how can the library use volunteers?
We're always in the need for volunteers. One of the projects that we have certainly projects where people can come to the library and volunteer with us, but those that can be done remotely are things like article indexing in journals. So if there are journals that all of you collect that you say have a complete run of or a near complete run of, we can give you a template and instructions about how you can index all the articles in those journals for us, so that then we can upload those to our online catalog. In terms of other sort of projects, there's really sort of things where we need, in many cases, we need you physically at the library. So say like scanning or other things like that. But that's an example of one project or one sort of volunteer project where people can sort of do it remotely. And I don't know if Marian knows of other ones, but I know that one for sure.
One of the other ones is just to, I also have an instruction list for doing this, sort of go through what we have in our collection and then just checking to see if there is a digital copy available. Like I had said earlier in the call, if there's a copy somewhere online and we can link to it in our collection, then we're happy to do that. But I don't really have the time to go searching online to find those things necessarily, but I do have a template. If somebody wanted to work on that project, I could send it out.
Is there contact information that I could put in the group chat?
Library@stamps.org. That would work.
Rob Hathaway, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
This isn't strictly on topic, except that all this conversation has made me worried about the APS staff time. Debbie is putting 10-hour days all of a sudden because she buys stuff. And with everybody remote, all the professors and department heads that she gets lists that she buys things for are requiring her to get ebooks and audiobooks. My goodness, I've listened to the most dry and droll textbooks in my office here on economics and sociology. She's working like crazy in terms of hours. She starts at an hour before she would leave on her commute, and she works for an hour after she would normally get home. I've been working remote for the last 10 years. I don't work like she does. Are you guys stressed out with more work than ever?
Well, since my boss is on this call, yes, I've been working incredible hours. No, last night I didn't finish till about 9 o'clock. I was working on something with the catalog on the back end. But most days I work from about 8 o'clock till 7, something like that. But again, it's sort of different when you're working at home because a lot of things for me, because you VPN into your desktop, so there's things you can work on there. Then there's things you can work on remotely. So it's a little bit of back and forth all the time when you're sort of doing your work. Some things take just an extra step because they're not just immediately on your desktop at home or your laptop at home. But it's about the same day. I mean, I've been answering a lot of requests and trying to keep up with other things and coordinating now more sort of virtual meetings than face-to-face meetings. So it's kept me busy, actually.
Yeah, she's been arguing a lot with the department heads about, well, I found this out on Audible or something. She has to find, to your discussion on copyrights and rights and stuff, she has to find something that she can offer legally from the university with the site license or whatever. She has to really check.
Right.
We have a question from Rick. Thank you so much for your patience. Rick, what are the chances of someone developing a database of articles searchable by Scott number where all philatelic material could be cross-referenced?
That would be wonderful. One of the questions we get all the time, I shouldn't say all the time, but a frequent question is, what articles do you have on this stamp? And it would be great to be able to sort of, our online catalog does have Scott numbers in it to a certain extent, but it's not really the best means by which to sort of find information on a particular stamp. A lot of times you have to find it by its name or something like that. It'd be great to have that. It really, really would. It reminds me of, I've done various talks on the Piper file, which is a big card catalog that's up on the second floor in the library, and it's basically these paper cards. I don't know if some of you are old enough to remember card catalogs in libraries. But anyway, there's a gentleman who did this for all the articles he could find in the major journals from about 1930 to about 1970. And there's about 30,000 of these cards. There are an endless number of these cards. And he put Scott numbers on them, so you can find things by Scott number. But it'd be wonderful if we could have them. We try to put that as a subject term in the database, in the online catalog, but it'd be wonderful to be able to search that way. I agree. Because we do get questions in the library that people are asking about a Scott number.
Okay. CJ, go ahead and unmute yourself, hon. You have a question?
Well, I was just curious because I know that you guys are working remote, you're working from home, and I believe that Pennsylvania has some orders that you have to stay home. Has anybody been going into the library like one person at a time to check it out or make sure everything's good?
Nope, nobody's been going in, no.
No, that was a sad day, to be sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to do basically everything remotely. So we're doing what we can remotely without having physical access to the library or the collection. Yeah.
Can't water our plants remotely though.
No.
I will add this since I'm allowed to say this. There is a minimal access that's going on. We need to be able to secure mail that comes in. We need to be able to secure the site. We also have to maintain relations with tenants that are on site that are not closed down. Big Springs Distillery comes as an example of that. I can affirm, as I'm sitting right in the middle of it right now, that there is someone in the library as we speak, and that all is going well. We do intend to maintain minimal access to the building, but that there are absolutely critical functions that have to be performed in order to make sure that the building and the security of the contents are always there. So I can affirm that we do run through a regular scope and scale of the building itself, make sure that it's clean, and that our tenants are well taken care of.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Very real world question. Thank you. It
Yeah.
satisfied my curiosity because, like I said, that was a sad day when we all had to bid adieu to our beloved library.
But other than that, all of the staff are in place at home. That's where we want them to stay safe and healthy. You know, we have a couple of folks that can access the building and do in order to maintain just fundamental basic operations of the place. But other than that, we want everybody else to stay at home. Marian, if you need some plants watered, send me a note and I'll take care of it for you.
Okay. Betsy told me I had to do it, so.
And I promise my thumb is not brown, so.
Thank you, Scott. That was Scott English, everyone, our executive director. Thank you. Do we have any other questions as we come to the 4 o'clock hour? It seems like there's a lot of people on the call, which to me demonstrates a real interest. You sure you don't want to talk now or forever hold your peace?
I have a question.
There we go. By all means, Mr. Lesher, please.
One of the things that I would love to have access to, and it's usually a for fee service, is being able to access the statutes of various states as I investigate certain revenue stamps from those states. Is that something that that the library could have available to members?
We certainly could. We can certainly look into that with opportunities for that. Absolutely. I don't see a problem with that. It would depend on what particular ones you're looking for, or things that we can sort of provide.
I'm going to jump in if I can. Maybe Debbie will answer this question. I'll ask you and her. She spends all of her time buying rights to these databases. I know that most public universities, you can walk in and use that stuff.
Right.
Ron, I love your work. Can't you go to your public local university library and ask that question if you can get access there? Your nearest public law school.
Hold on, he's muted, hon.
What does Debbie say about that question?
What was the question?
If he wants access to legal databases to look up the statutes of a particular state's law,
Yeah.
that's the kind of database stuff you buy all the time, right?
When I was an adjunct at Washington College, as a member of the faculty, I could easily access that. I'm not sure that I could do that right now. First of all, I think those libraries are closed as well. And I've certainly done the same thing when I've gone over to Washington to the Library of Congress. There I can get easy access, and actually I prefer hard copy many times. And the Library of Congress has hard copy available to me as well. But again, that's not an option right now during these difficult times.
Right, we don't, as far as I know, during these times, we don't have a plan to sort of try and provide access currently. It may be something when all this is over, we can certainly look into. I know I've looked into some, I know this isn't the same thing, but some similar databases like newspapers.com, which I thought would have some value for our philatelic patrons, but subscription services, I mean, we would have to look into. It's usually that's sort of the purview, if you will, of larger research libraries, and mostly university libraries have that kind of access. I'm not against it, and it's certainly something we could sort of look into if there's enough of a need for it. But I really have to sort of, in terms of my budget, I have to sort of have a really good reason for and a good need for a particular service before we go down that road. That's all, to be honest.
Just as an aside, I see that in the comments that we have will stamp chats continue. I know that this is a bit off topic, but not exactly, since we're on one. That I'm not exactly in a position to say whether or not that they will. However, I think that this pandemic has certainly shown that this is virtual is a game changer. And it is being used, and people our chats are growing by the day. So I do think that if not daily, on a weekly basis, and friends, remember, a lot of you are members, and if this is something that you desire, you know, do let us know. We want to hear your opinions on that. Anybody else on this APS staff want to back me up on that?
Yeah, I would do these. I would do another one of these each week if you want. It's I enjoy these. I think it's a great way, other than going to a stamp show, which we all can't do at the moment. This is a great way to meet members. Great way to put faces to names sometimes. Great way to keep in touch. I'm all for it. The more we do this, the better.
Great.
So I can address this a little bit more. This is Scott English again. You know, the pivot, for those of you who've been paying attention to the APS, you know that over the last few years, I've talked about modernization of the APS and our goals in terms of implementing a long-term strategy that makes us more viable in the modern age. And so, you know, stamp collecting itself hasn't changed, but how we serve the needs of our members does. This is one example of it. I love the stamp chats. I think they're fantastic. This was one of the first and early ideas we had about rolling out services and connections during this time frame, because we wanted members to stay home and feel safe. We knew that stamp clubs were being canceled and so forth. I am currently looking at, and we're about to make an investment in a long-term platform that will serve the needs of the membership. It probably won't be Zoom, just for everybody to know that. We need something a little bit more robust that's good for presentations and education seminars and things like that. So if I'm going to speculate, I think we'll probably go with a Citrix product that will help us do that, and we'll start pivoting the stamp chats over to that. I'll apologize for the change in technology in midstream, but we have been piloting a couple of different platforms just to understand how people adapt and how it serves the needs of our members. And I'm literally looking at me right now, proposing dealing with that long term. And so I'm very excited about where we're going to take this. We are bringing online summer seminar online this year because we're not going to be able to meet in Belfont. We want to make sure our members stay home and stay safe. I think that even into June, we're going to have members who are concerned about their health and safety, and we respect that, and we want to provide maximum access. But all of this is critical to one thing, and I'm going to talk about this in my town hall meeting on Thursday night. Just like everything else that we do, the wisdom's really possessed by our membership, not necessarily by us. Marian and Scott are fantastic resources for the organization, as are a few of our other staff members. But it's real. Our success is really dependent on having our membership support us and being able to help us do these presentations. Casey on the phone, on the call today, did a wonderful job yesterday with the 1898 transmiss. That's like the third time I've seen that presentation, but I enjoy it every time because she's done such a great job with it. And I know there are a lot of other great experts on the call as well that may not be comfortable with using technology. We'll help you get there. The knowledge is something we don't have. And if we can help connect the bridge, if we can bridge the gap between the knowledge and the capability of delivering that online, I think this can be a long-term, very successful program for the APS and its membership. There's my pitch for the day.
Well said, and I'm happy to have had the backing of our executive director, Scott English, on that. Thank you. Scott, Tiffany, did you want to say something?
No, I just agree. I think this is a great platform for sharing ideas, for letting you know about, I'll speak for the library, for letting you know about new things in the library. And what I always like to do during these sessions too, when the library is involved, is if there are things that you'd like to see in the library or services you'd like to see us doing, please let us know. We're always eager to we were talking earlier about donations and things like that, but we're always eager to find new resources for the library or new materials that you'd like to see in the library that would help you in your research and in your collecting.
And on that note, friends, we have reached the 4 o'clock hour, and to be timely, I'd like to conclude our meeting. Thank you very much to Mr. Scott Tiffney and Ms. Marian Mills for joining us on our Zoom chat, and of course, to all of you who've come to our Zoom chat and asked questions and listened. Remember, you can go to stamps.org. We have a lot of great news. You can access the digital library. Our stamp store is open, albeit the fact that our shipment is delayed, but you can still shop. We do have a wish list capacity for you, so go ahead and fill up your cart if you wish. We have our 25 under 30, so our philatelic friends that are under 30 years old, they can have digital membership for $25. And tomorrow we will have a Zoom chat at 3 p.m., same time, same place. We'll be talking about the philately in the classroom. So please join us. And again, we appreciate you being on the call and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye,
Take
friends.
care.
Thank you.